There is a sentence in the New York Times report published this morning, sourced to people familiar with the operation, confirmed by the CIA, described in detail by two Israelis briefed directly on the strike, that explains more about how Khamenei died than any satellite image, any bomb damage assessment, or any official military press release. The sentence is this: intelligence showed that Khamenei would be at that meeting, according to one of them, and the strike was timed accordingly. Read that again. Not that American satellites tracked his location, not that signals intelligence intercepted his communications, not that artificial intelligence systems analyzed his movement patterns and predicted his location. Intelligence showed he would be at that meeting, and the strike was timed accordingly. That is the specific operational language of a human source, a person, someone in that meeting, or someone who knew about that meeting, who transmitted to the CIA the single piece of information that 35 years of the most sophisticated surveillance architecture in human history had never previously produced, where Khamenei would physically be, at what specific time, on what specific Saturday morning. According to the New York Times, the CIA had tracked Khamenei's location and knew of a meeting of top Iranian officials slated for Saturday morning in central Tehran. The American intelligence agency had been tracking Khamenei for months, the Times reported, citing people familiar with the operation, and learned that a meeting of top Iranian officials was set for Saturday morning at a leadership compound in the heart of Tehran. Washington and Tel Aviv originally planned to launch strikes on Iran at night, but officials adjusted the plan based on the CIA intelligence, according to the Times. The U.S. gave the information to Israel, which planned to carry out the attack on Iranian leadership. Originally planned for night, adjusted for morning. That single operational detail, the change from nighttime to daytime strike, the flexibility to redesign a campaign architecture based on intelligence that arrived close enough to the strike window that timing could be adjusted, tells you everything about how high the source was, how recent the intelligence was, and how confident the CIA was in its accuracy. You do not redesign a major military operation hours before launch because a satellite showed you something interesting. You redesign it because a person you trust told you something specific. A specific meeting, a specific location, a specific time. The initial strike targeted a meeting of senior Iranian officials, according to two Israelis familiar with the operation. Intelligence showed that Khamenei would be at that meeting, according to one of them, and the strike was timed accordingly. The IDF said 40 senior Iranian leaders were killed within a minute across two locations. 40 senior Iranian leaders. 1 minute, two locations. The strike did not happen because America got lucky with a satellite pass. The strike happened because someone who had access to Khamenei's schedule, someone inside the 4 or 5 people who knew about that morning meeting, chose to transmit that information to the network that transmitted it to the CIA, that transmitted it to the IDF, that redesigned its strike package around a Saturday morning daytime window that Iran never expected. Because Iran believed its own security protocols made daytime precision strikes impossible. Trump claimed Iranian security forces and Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps members were already seeking immunity and urged them to peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots, seeking immunity. Trump used that phrase, seeking immunity, in the same Truth Social posts where he celebrated Khamenei's death as justice, not surrendering, not defecting, seeking immunity, the specific legal framing of people who have already done something that requires protection from prosecution, who are negotiating the terms of their cooperation before their role becomes known. The inside source who gave CIA the meeting location is not the only person inside Iran's military and intelligence structures who has been cooperating with American and Israeli intelligence. The source document has said this for 6 weeks. The New York Times confirmed it this morning. And Trump just told the world that more such people are contacting American authorities right now. Stay with me. Because the question of who betrayed Khamenei is not just a historical curiosity. It is the live operational variable that determines whether America's regime change project succeeds or produces the exact opposite of what it intended. The source document draws a direct parallel between Khamenei's death and every previous major Israeli intelligence success against Iranian and Iranian-backed leadership. And the parallel has a single consistent element that every Western outlet has reported around, but none has stated directly as the central fact. Qasem Soleimani. 3 people knew the details of his travel to Baghdad in January 2020. Hassan Nasrallah. A small number of people knew the location of the tunnel complex in Beirut's Dahieh suburb where he convened operational meetings. Ismail Haniyeh. The Tehran guest house where he was staying was known to a handful of people within the Iranian security apparatus. And now Khamenei. A meeting of 4 or 5 people. The most restricted security gathering inside the most security-conscious government in the Middle East, whose location was transmitted to CIA in time to redesign a nighttime operation into a Saturday morning strike. An establishment insider who hails from one of the country's leading clerical families. Larijani had been overseeing Iran's efforts to reach a nuclear deal with the United States. just a month after Washington sanctioned him in January for allegedly directing a deadly crackdown on anti-government protests. Ali Larijani, the man who emerged as Iran's most senior surviving official, the man who was in that meeting and survived it, the man who is now vowing to stab America in the heart, was sanctioned by Washington in January 2026 for directing a crackdown on protesters and simultaneously overseeing Iran's nuclear deal negotiations with the United States. Sanctioned and negotiating simultaneously, the man whose name appeared on Khamenei's succession list 6 days before the strike. The man who, alone among the 4 or 5 people who knew about Saturday's meeting, is alive today. The source document does not accuse Larijani. It notes the pattern that every Israeli intelligence success follows, the pattern of the survivor who knew. The pattern that produces exactly the question Iran's own security services are now asking inside their own building. Trump wrote on Truth Social, Khamenei, one of the most evil people in history, is dead. He was unable to avoid our intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems, and working closely with Israel, there was not a thing he or the other leaders that have been killed along with him could do. Unable to avoid our intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems, Trump's choice of words is not accidental. He does not say our bombs were accurate or our pilots were skilled. He says Khamenei was unable to avoid our intelligence, placing the weapon that killed Khamenei not in an Israeli F-35, but in the CIA's human intelligence network inside Iran, whose existence he just confirmed publicly on Truth Social while simultaneously urging Iranian security forces to seek immunity. The recruitment video in Farsi that the CIA posted to social media in February, the video that a Dutch diplomat was arrested for distributing on Starlink in January, was not preparatory propaganda. It was the public face of an active recruitment campaign that was already producing results inside Iran's highest security structures. The official IRNA news agency reported that a 3-person council consisting of the country's president, the chief of the judiciary, and one of the jurists of the Guardian Council will temporarily assume all leadership duties in the country. The body will temporarily oversee the country until a new supreme leader is elected. A 3-person council, the constitutional succession mechanism activated within hours, President Pezeshkian, Judiciary Chief Mohseni Ejei, and a Guardian Council jurist. These are not military men. They are legal and clerical figures whose institutional authority derives from the same constitutional document that Khamenei himself administered for 35 years. They are the government. And they are governing a country that has declared 40 days of mourning while simultaneously firing the 6th wave of missiles at 27 American bases, mining the Strait of Hormuz, attacking an oil tanker with Iranian crew members on board, and watching its crowds pour into the streets, some to mourn, some to celebrate, all of them uncertain about what comes next. If the regime feels threatened, it'll lash out harder than it would if it thought it could ride out the attacks, a geopolitics watcher said. Russia and China will likely refrain from offering Tehran meaningful military aids beyond rhetorical support. Refrain from meaningful military aid. That assessment, from CNBC this morning, citing geopolitical analysts, is the variable that most directly determines whether this conflict stays regional or expands to a global confrontation. China and Russia have provided Iran with intelligence, with weapon systems, with diplomatic cover, but neither has committed military forces. Neither has entered the war. Putin called for an emergency UN Security Council session. Xi issued a statement calling for restraint. Neither has crossed the line from strategic partnership to active military co-belligerence, because crossing that line transforms a regional war into a confrontation between nuclear powers, and neither Beijing nor Moscow has decided that Iran's survival is worth that cost. Yet. There's a statement from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, delivered at the Emergency Security Council session, convened this morning, that will be remembered by historians as the most accurate single-sentence summary of what happened in the 36 hours between Saturday's 2:30 a.m. strike announcement and Sunday morning's confirmation of Khamenei's death. The Secretary General said diplomacy had been squandered. At an emergency session of the UN Security Council, Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that diplomacy had been squandered. Military action carries the risk of igniting a chain of events that no one can control in the most volatile region of the world, he said. A chain of events that no one can control. That phrase, from the most senior international official on Earth, speaking to the emergency session of the body whose entire purpose is to prevent exactly this kind of escalation, is the precise description of where the world stands on Sunday morning, March 1st, 2026. Not a controlled military operation, not a managed escalation, a chain of events, each link producing the next, each retaliation triggering a counter-retaliation, each side's domestic political constraints making de-escalation harder rather than easier with every passing hour. Trump warned that bombing would continue, uninterrupted throughout the week or as long as necessary to achieve what he called the goal of peace throughout the Middle East and indeed the world. Throughout the week, or as long as necessary, peace throughout the Middle East, and indeed the world. Those two phrases, the indefinite timeline and the maximalist objective, define the precise parameters of America's current commitment. Not a surgical strike with defined endpoints. A campaign whose duration is measured in weeks, whose goal is the peace of the entire world, and whose mechanism is continuous uninterrupted bombing of a country of 90 million people who have just declared 40 days of mourning for the man those bombs killed. 40 days of mourning is not a diplomatic formality in Shia Islam. It is a religious obligation, a period during which grief is institutionalized, during which the community marks its loss through ritual, during which every Friday prayer in every mosque in Iran will include the name Khamenei, alongside the names of martyrs whose deaths created obligations of response. The Islamic Republic has spent 47 years teaching its population that American and Israeli aggression demands resistance. That ideology did not die with Khamenei. It was the water every Iranian institution has been swimming in since 1979, and the killing of the man who personified it has, in the first 24 hours, produced more people chanting resistance in Iranian streets than celebrating regime change. Saturday's strikes on Iran targeted 24 provinces, killing at least 201 people, according to Iranian media reports, citing the Red Crescent. Among the attacks, Israel struck 2 schools in Iran, killing at least 108 people at the Shajare Tayyebe Girls Elementary School in the southern city of Manab, and 2 others at a school east of the capital, Tehran. 108 children in a girls' elementary school. In Manab, a provincial city in southern Iran whose entire population had nothing to do with Khamenei's decisions, nothing to do with Iran's nuclear program, nothing to do with the IRGC's command structure, 108 children killed in a single strike on a single school in a city that appears nowhere on any legitimate military targeting document, because there are no military targets in Manab that justify killing children on a Saturday morning. Those 108 children are the fact that will outlast every strategic calculation, every regime change theory, every succession council announcement, and every stock market reaction to the Strait of Hormuz closure. They are the fact that the streets of Karachi are burning over. They are the fact that Baghdad's green zone is under siege. They are the fact that 40 days of mourning in Iran will be mourning not just for Khamenei, but for 108 girls who went to school on a Saturday and did not come home. Strikes across the Middle East continued Sunday, with Israel saying it launched a fresh wave in the heart of Tehran, and Iran mounting attacks in Israel and across the Persian Gulf as the regime pledged to avenge the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. One of those strikes killed at least 9 people near Jerusalem, 9 dead near Jerusalem. Fresh waves in the heart of Tehran. The war that started at 2:30 a.m. on Saturday is, on Sunday morning, hitting both capitals, Tehran and the area near Jerusalem, simultaneously, while the Strait of Hormuz is mined, while 150 tankers sit stalled outside the Gulf, while Tokyo is about to open its market to a world where the CIA just confirmed it has human sources inside Iran's highest security structures, where the supreme leader is dead, where the succession council is governing under continuous bombardment, and where Trump has promised to continue bombing throughout the week, or as long as necessary. The insider who gave CIA the meeting location changed the course of the Middle East in a single phone call or a single encrypted message. The chain of events that call set in motion, Khamenei dead, 40 days of mourning declared, 27. American bases under attack, strait conditionally closed, 108 girls dead in Manab. That chain is what the Secretary General meant when he said no one can control it. Share this video to every contact you have right now. The CIA had a human source in Khamenei's meeting. 40 senior Iranian leaders were killed in 1 minute. Trump says bombing continues throughout the week. 108 children died in a school in Manab. The Succession Council is governing under bombardment, and Tokyo opens in hours.